योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Hello, myself, Dr. Shilpi Sharma, would like to first thank UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University, which gave me this opportunity to share some of my views and knowledge on a very important topic of the Indian Constitution, that is the basic structure theory of the Indian Constitution. Before I proceed further, I would like to thank Dr. Jagdish Joshi, who is a professor and director of UGC HRDC of Gujarat University. And I must say that he has a very great teamwork. He is having a team of very skilled and dedicated faculties who, without whom the possibility of this successful and seamless refresher course was not possible. And we all know that HRDC Gujarat is number 15 in India and number 1 in Gujarat. And they have set a benchmark by organizing the refresher courses like this before also, and now it is online. So I wish that this center will progress further and will be delivering the refresher courses, conducting the refresher courses in future also for the participants. And I am happy that I am giving a small role as a resource person to speak on one of the topics of the constitutional law. Before I proceed with my talk, we must know that what are the basic things, or what are the areas, or what are the perspectives which will be covering under this 1 hour. So we will first see how this basic structure theory of the Indian Constitution evolved and how it developed over the period of time. Secondly, we will study this particular theory from different perspectives, like what are the implications of this theory on Article 13, how Article 13 and the meaning of law was interpreted in this particular theory. Secondly, how Schedule 9 is being interpreted, what is the importance of Schedule 9, and how the concept and the nature of Schedule 9 changes over the development of this particular theory. We will also see how far the parliament is having power to amend or to alter or bring variation in the constitution under which it was established. So we will be studying this theory from different aspects. We will also be going into the detail, though very briefly, about whether this theory is a judicial creativity of Indian courts, or this theory has been imported from the other concept or other field of thoughts, maybe that is from India, or whether it is imported from the thought of the other schools which are situated outside our territory. So we will move to the basic theory, basic concept, the theory of the basic structure. But before that, we all know that it is being propounded in the case of Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala in 1973, and it touches upon first the judicial creativity as a judicial process, Article 13, as we have already known that Article 13 is very important while studying this theory. Article 368, during the evolution of this theory, during that period, Article 368 faced many amendments in it. Many clauses were added, many clauses were held invalid, and many other clauses were debated, discussed, and interpreted. So Article 368 is also being covered while we discuss the evolution of this theory. It is also focused on the independence of judiciary, because we will study that how far restrictions on the legislature can be put so that the legislature will not encroach upon the powers of judiciary. So while we study the evolution and after the interpretation, further interpretation of the theory, we will see how these restrictions are put on the legislature. This theory is also important because during the evolution of this particular theory, some new theories and doctrines were also propounded. One of the doctrine is the doctrine of implied limitation, and the other doctrine is the doctrine of prospective overruling. So these two doctrines were also discussed, and these two doctrines were also put forth by the different parties during the arguments and also accepted by the court while propounding and while discussing, interpreting this particular theory of the basic structure. Now, before we go directly to the theory, we should know a little bit about the different aspects that will be covered in this theory. Like there are some related concepts. First concept that we should know is the procedure to amend the Constitution. Now, we all know that this procedure to amend the Constitution is given in Part 20 of the Constitution, where we have Article 368. Now, Article 368, when it was written in the Constitution, was in some other form. The form in which Article 368 we have today is very different, and Article 368 got this form during the evolution of the basic structure theory. Some of the things that we must remember about Article 368, that it defines what is constitutional amendment, and it also gives the procedure to carry on that amendment. If we see clause 1 of Article 368, it constitutes what is amendment. Like clause 1, if we see of Article 368, it says that by the way of addition, variation, and repeal, the amendment can be done. So if we want to know that what is amendment, Article 368, clause 1 is very important, that when we are adding something to a provision of the Constitution, we are amending it. If we are modifying a particular provision, we are bringing the variation in it. When we are invalidating or repealing any of the provision, that also means that we are amending the Constitution. Clause 2 of Article 368 tells about what procedure should be adopted for the amendment. Now here, two types of procedures are required. One, there are certain provisions which can be amended by having a 2/3 majority in the parliament, and there are some other provisions which can be amended not only by the 2/3 majority in the Constitution, but we also need to get the approval from the state legislatures. So this way, the procedure of the amendment is given in clause 2. But if we read Article 368, we would not find if there is any limitation on the amending powers. If we read Article 368, we get to know that all the provisions of the Constitution can be amended. For some of the provisions, relatively less rigorous process is there. For some of the provisions, comparatively rigorous procedure is mentioned. But according to Article 368, if we see it, all the provisions can be amended. Now, because of this, all these cases which are related with the basic structure theory were initiated in the court, and the court put certain limitations on the amending powers. Now at present, we have certain limitations on the amending powers, like Article 368 cannot be used for all the provisions in all its forms, but they have some limitations. Those limitations are not given by the parliament through the amendments, but they are given by the courts in the Kesavananda Bharati judgment, and those limitations we can see when we study the basic structure theory of the constitution. So one concept that we will be discussing here is the procedure to amend the constitution. The second concept is Schedule 9 of the constitution. Now, Schedule 9 was not originally there with the constitution when we have it, but it was added through a amendment. Now, at present, Schedule 9 is having in all 284 legislative acts, and in general, these acts which are listed in Schedule 9 are beyond the judicial scrutiny. Now, this Schedule 9 was added to the Constitution by the Constitution First Amendment Act 1951. And with this Schedule 9, two more articles were added, that were Article 31A and Article 31B. Now, Article 31A was related to the acquisition or acquisition of certain land and the act that will be made for that acquisition. And it was given in Article 31A that these acts will not be challenged as violative of Part 3 of the Constitution. Article 31B said that none of the acts or the provisions, if it is listed in Schedule 9, it will not be deemed to be void, and it will not ever become void on the grounds that they are violative of Part 3 of the Constitution, that are the fundamental rights. So, according to Schedule 9 and according to the first Constitution Amendment Act in 1951, if a fundamental rights are being abridged by an act, and that act, if it is listed in Schedule 9, the violation of the fundamental rights cannot be challenged in the courts of law. Now, the present situation is, after Kesavananda Bharati judgment, Schedule 9 is now open for the judicial review. There were certain doubts in the Kesavananda Bharati judgment itself, which were again clarified in the cases that came before the court after that. And Schedule 9 and the scope of judicial review of the acts that are in the Schedule 9 was again revisited. So we will see further what the Schedule 9 presently says and in what form the Schedule 9 is there in the Constitution after Kesavananda Bharati judgment. Now, one of more concept that we have to see here is the definition of law. Now, if we want to see what is law, we have to visit Article 13. Now here, Article 13, Clause 3, it was also interpreted while the theory of the basic structure was evolving. Article 13 also provides us the scope of judicial review. Now, Article 13, what does Article 13 says? That Article 13, Clause 2 says that the state should not make any law which is against the violation, which is against the fundamental rights that are there in Part 3. Now, Article 13.3 tells us what will be considered as law when we bring certain violation of fundamental right for the judicial review. Now, if we see Article 13(3), the term law, it includes in itself the ordinances, order, bylaws, rule, regulation, notification, custom or usage. Now, if we see Article 13(3), it doesn't specifically mention constitutional amendments. So, before Keshwananda Bharati judgment, and to be very specific, before IC Golaknath judgment, you can violate a fundamental right through the constitutional amendment, but you could not violate that fundamental right by making a legislative act. So this was the situation, and it was further interpreted, and now we will see what is the current scenario after we got the basic structure theory of the Indian Constitution. Moving further, we see the evolution of the theory of basic structure. But before we go to the evolution of the theory, we should research how this theory was inspired from a foreign school of thought, and whether the inspiration of the theory was the arguments that were put before the court, or the inspiration of the theory from somewhere else. Now, it is always argued that this theory of the basic structure is a result of the judicial creativity of the Indian code. But there is one more fact about which we should be very much enlightened, that it is imported. It is also said to be imported from the lecture that was delivered in Banaras Hindu University by Professor Conrad. Professor Conrad was a German. He was invited to the Banaras Hindu University in 1965, and there he gave the lecture on the topic limitation power of the amendments. The specific topic was implied limitation of the amending power. Now, there he talked about what will be the dangers if we don't put any limitation on the amending powers that are mentioned in any of the constitution. He gave the example of Weimar's constitution, that is the constitution of Germany, and how Hitler manipulated and amended the constitution to fulfill his desires of governing in a particular way. He pointed out in his lecture at BHU that in 1930s, when Hitler came to the power, when he became chancellor, the first thing that Hitler did was to amend the constitution. The process and the power of amendment was given in Article 28 of the Weimar's constitution. It said that constitution can be amended by a resolution to be passed in the parliament, and if the resolution received the 2/3 majority of votes, the amendment will be taken place. So with the help of the 2/3 majority, he amended the constitution. He gave an enabling act according to which all the powers, all the governing powers came in his own hand. And the act also mentioned that the constitution can be amended through the act also without following any procedure that is given in the Article 28 of the Weimar's constitution. And the result we all know. So Professor Conrad actually throws light on this particular happening, and he opined that the procedure or the rigorous procedure itself is not sufficient to safeguard a particular constitution and its very basic nature. we should also have certain implied or the specific limitations on the amending power of the constitution if we want to preserve the very basic essence of the constitution. He actually discussed Article 368 of the Indian Constitution also, and he questioned whether by following the procedure that is there in the Article 368, whether we can amend Article 1 also, which gives the identity to our nation. Because Article 368 doesn't have any limitation on the amending powers. His lecture was being used in a paper that was published on the basis of his lecture, and it was said that M.K. Nambiar, who was counsel in the I.C. Golaknath case, he was very much impressed by his views, and he cited his lecture during his argument in that particular case. In that particular case, his contentions was not taken care of, but later in the Keshavananda Bharati case, that views were taken up and the theory of basic structure was propounded. So it is also said that basic structure theory is actually imported from the views of Professor Conrad, who was a German. It was adopted by the Indian courts, and Indian courts put forth this theory, which gives an implied limitation on the amending powers that are there in Article 368. Now, let us go to the evolution of the theory of basic structure, how this particular theory of the basic structure evolved. Now, when we got our constitution in 1950, there are two important articles in the part 4 of the constitution, and that were Article 39B and 39C. These two were the part of the directive principles. Now 39B, if we see, it speaks about the redistribution of ownership and control of the material resources of the nation. And Article 39C speaks about no concentration of wealth. Now, there was a need to implement these two articles, which were the socialist goal. And for the implementation of these two articles, many acts for the redistribution of the resources and many acts which aim to control or to stop the concentration of wealth with one particular section of the society were made. So in 1950s, many of the laws which were in connection of land and the tenancy were made by the parliament. Because of these laws, the landowners got affected and they filed petitions in the court that these laws should be struck down because these laws are violative of right to property. That was in part 3. And if we see Article 13, clause 2, the state cannot make any law which abrages the fundamental rights that are given in part 3. So on the basis of that, these laws were challenged before the court of law. Now court in all those cases struck down the actions of the legislative in this regard because they were going against the fundamental rights that were given in part 3 of the constitution. Because of that, the parliament, through the amendment, it was the first constitutional amendment, the parliament added schedule 9 to the Indian constitutions and started listing all these acts in schedule 9. Along with schedule 9, as we have already discussed, article 31A and 31B was also inserted into the Indian constitution. Aggrieved by that, there were the series of cases that were filed to challenge such amendments. And these series of cases and the interpretations of the matter related that lead to the evolution of the theory of basic structure. Now, if we study the evolution of the basic structure theory, we shall study this evolutionary phase in 3 stages. There are 3 stages if we study the Keshwananda Bharati judgment and its implication in the form of theory of the basic structure. The first stage will be the pre-Keshwananda Bharati stage. At this stage, there was no mention of the basic structure. Although in this stage, Article 13 and Article 368, along with the implication of Article 368 to the Part 3, it was being discussed. The second stage came when the basic structure theory was proposed by the court. So it was the stage when Keshwananda Bharati judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court. So we have to study how this judgment was delivered and what were the background of these judgments. There was one another stage that we usually skip to study, but that stage is very important, and that is post Keshwananda Bharati stage. Now, in this stage, the basic structure theory got strengthened. It was crystallized and some new dimensions were added to the theory. Theory was elaborately explained. Theory was tested. Theory was applied to different other cases. And theory was finally explained in a way that how it will be recognized that a particular provision is a basic structure. So the theory has been interpreted and explained to that extent. So because of this post Keshwananda Bharati stage is very important to study for all the students of law. We will take up all these stages one by one. Now, if we go to the stage 1. Now, in this stage, we are having 3 judgments. We are having Shankari Prasad versus Union of India that was given in 1951. We are having Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan, which was given in 1965. We are having I.C. Golaknath versus State of Punjab that was given in 1967. We will take up these 3 judgments one by one, and we will see how the different provisions were interpreted and how these cases lead to the evolution of the basic structure theory. Now, about the Shankari Prasad judgment, in this case, the petition was filed under Article 32 of the Indian Constitution, and it was challenging the validity of the first Constitution Act. Through this first Constitution Act, we all know that along with Schedule 9, Article 31A and Article 31B was added to the Constitution. Now here, the petitioners gave certain arguments in the favor of their points. They said that amendments that were there in the form of Article 31A, 31B and Schedule 9, these amendments are taking away and abridging their rights which were guaranteed to them by Part 3 of the Constitution. And because a state cannot make any law which abrages or violates the fundamental rights as per Article 13(2), these constitutional amendments should be held void. Now, we all know that Article 13(3), which defines law, it doesn't contain the constitutional amendment in itself. The point the petitioner here tried to establish was also that Article 13(2) will be including constitutional amendment. That means the orders, bylaws, notifications, all these that were mentioned as a law in the clause 3 of Article 13 shall also contain itself the constitutional amendment. And if constitutional amendments are abridging the fundamental rights, they should be held void under Article 13(2) of the Constitution. Now here, the court held that only the ordinary law, only the legislative acts that are passed through the parliament are considered law under Article 13, Clause 2. And the constitutional amendments that will be brought by the parliament, they will not be categorized as the law for the sake of the application of Article 13, Clause 2 of the Constitution. That means the legislative act cannot violate your fundamental rights, but the constitutional amendments can violate your fundamental rights. We all know that the process of the passing of the constitutional amendments is also through the parliament. The process adopted is similar to the ordinary law, yet the court decided that constitutional amendments will not be understood as law and they have a liberty to violate the fundamental rights of the citizens under Part 3 of the Constitution. Now, after this case, in 1965, Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan judgment was given by the court. Now here, the 17th constitutional amendment was challenged. Now, what the 17th constitutional amendment was saying? Through this amendment, the scope of Article 31A was broadened, and some of the acts that were related to the acquisition of the property, the acts were listed in Schedule 9. And these acts were the state acts which were enacted in the state of Kerala and Madras. And the aim of this act were the agrarian reforms of certain sorts. Now here, when the case went to the court, the petitioner gave the arguments that the amendment that was there, it is limiting the jurisdiction of the High Court, because the amendments or the acts were listed through the amendment, the acts were listed in Schedule 9 and they cannot go for the judicial review. Now, judicial review, the power of the judicial review has been given to the High Court and the Supreme Court. And in this way, indirectly, these amendments are limiting the jurisdiction of the High Court. And if we see Article 368, if the jurisdiction of the High Court has to be limited, then the procedure of the ratification by half of the states is required. So if through the Constitution, any of the act is put in Schedule 9 and thus preventing the judicial review under judicial review by the High Court, that amendment should pass the procedure of ratification by one half of the states. This argument was rejected by the court. Now, in this particular case, the court somehow agreed to reconsider the judgment in Shankari Prasad case, but it approved the judgment of the Shankari Prasad case here. Now, this judgment was important because in the minority judgment, there were two judges, Justice Hidayatullah and Justice Mudholkar. They were having a separate but the concurring minority judgment, and in the minority views, they mentioned that fundamental rights uh, 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 should not be abridged by the amendment in the Constitution, and they also said that there should be some implied limitations. The power of the amendment should be limited and should not be unlimited. But because they were the minority opinions, that opinion did not impacted the resultant effect or the judgment that was given by the court. Now, we must remember that this judgment was given in 1965 when Professor Conrad from Germany gave the lecture at BHU and talked about the implied limitations on the amending powers. It was said that Justice Mudholkar, he was impressed by the views of Professor Conrad, and therefore in his minority opinion, he said that there should be certain limitations on the amending power. So the seed of the theory of basic structure was sown in the Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan itself. How this view was further converted into the majority view, that we will see through the course of the other judgments that were given by the courts in the process of evolution of the basic structure theory. The third case that falls or that can be categorized as the stage 1 case is IC Golaknath versus State of Punjab, that was given in 1967. Now, this petition was also filed by the heirs of Golaknath, and the petition was challenging the inclusion of Punjab Security of Land Tenures Act 1953 in the 9th schedule, and it was listed in the 9th schedule through the 17th constitutional amendment itself. And there was first and fourth constitutional amendments also, and they were challenged on the ground that they are abridging the fundamental rights and thus they are unconstitutional. The first constitutional amendment, we all know, it was related to insertion of Article 31A and 31B along with Schedule 9 of the Constitution to the Constitution. Amendment 4th, it was related to the right to property that was there in Part 3 at that time. So these amendments were challenged as they were violating the fundamental rights. Now, this case actually overruled Sajjan Singh and Shankari Prasad judgment. Now here the court held that Parliament is having no power to amend Part 3 in a way that those amendments will be taking away the fundamental rights. Now here they said that there should be certain limitations on the amending power. The importance of this case is that for the first time, the Supreme Court decided that under the purview of Article 13(2), constitutional amendments also falls. That means the law that has the meaning of which has been elaborated in Clause 3 of the Article 13 should also include constitutional amendments in it. Means through the constitutional amendment also, one cannot take away the fundamental rights of the citizens that are there in Part 3 of the Constitution. It also said that Constitution provides an implied limitation of the amending powers. Now, how this judgment is different from Keshwananda Bharati judgment. In Keshwananda Bharati judgment, the basic structure was propounded, and it was said, it was established that these basic structures cannot be amended by the parliament. Here in this judgment, the limitation on the amending powers was suggested in a way of more stringent procedure for the amendment. Here, the court said that a particular process need to be adopted when we are amending the fundamental rights. They said that it should be amended through the Constituent Assembly, and Constituent Assembly should be called uh, by the virtue of the residuary power that was contained by the Union as per Article 248. And the procedure to pass the resolution they have suggested. So for the very first time, the phrase basic structure was given in this particular case by one of the counsel, that was Advocate M.K. Nambiar. Here, Nambiar had actually carry forward the views of Professor Conrad, from whom he was deeply impressed. So here the court accepted that constitutional amendments are law, but also they said that limitations will be, they suggested that the limitations will be in the form of the more stringent procedure that was suggested in the judgment. Otherwise, the judgment said that fundamental rights cannot be amended, or fundamental rights cannot be taken away through the amendment. Now, this particular case made some difficulty, or put forth a certain difficulty before the parliament, which still have to come up with many of the laws that were aiming at the goal of socialism that we were having in our constitution. So against these difficulties, the evolution of the Keshwananda Bharati judgment and the evolution of the basic structure theory happened. Now, stage 1 contains only the three basic and three very important judgments. Now, in the stage 2, we not only study the Keshwananda Bharati judgment alone, but we will also study the background in which the Keshwananda Bharati judgment was given, and that was the 24th constitutional amendment that happened in 1971. So in the second part of my lecture, we will dealing with the stage 2 of the evolution of the basic structure theory, and what are the role of the different amendments that played in the evolution of the theory, and how the stage 3 came, and how in the stage 3 the basic structure theory, which was propounded in a particular judgment, was crystallized and further interpreted and explained. Now we'll go to the stage 2 of the evolution of the basic structure theory, or the stage 2 of the study of the basic structure theory. And that stage 2 is about the 24th constitutional amendment that was brought in 1971. Now, in this particular amendment, a new clause, that is clause 4, was added to Article 13. And this particular clause was stating that nothing in this article shall apply to any amendment to this constitution made under Article 368. That means if through Article 368, any amendments are being introduced in the Constitution and that amendments are violating the fundamental rights, Article 13 or the judicial review as contained in Article 13 cannot be done. Amendments in Article 368 were also introduced. And the amendments, what amendments were there through in the Article 368? First of all, a marginal heading was added. That was saying the heading of the Article 368 before the amendment was power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution. Now, after the amendment, the heading became power of Parliament to amend the Constitution and procedure thereof. That means this particular article contains the power as well as gives the procedure of the amendment. Now here, through the 24th constitutional amendment, clause 1 that was added to Article 368 actually stated what we meant by constitutional amendments. So here it says that Parliament may, in its exercise of its constituent power, amend by way of addition, variation, or repeal any provision of this Constitution in accordance with the procedure laid down in this article. That means if we are adding something, introducing variation, or we are repealing any provision, that will mean that we are amending the Constitution. So this explanation, this very important explanation was given through 24th constitutional amendment that was done in 1971. Moreover, clause 3 was also added that was saying that nothing in Article 13 shall apply to any amendment in Article 368. So here Article 368 was amended to suffice the purpose of Article 13, and Article 13 was amended to suffice the purpose that was contained in Article 368. Now here, under Article 368(2), one more clause, that was clause 2, was added, and this clause was mandating the president to give his assent to any bill which is duly passed under the article. That means any constitutional amendment bill passed through the Parliament shall be mandatorily consented by the president. So president will not return any bill which is related to the constitutional amendment. So 24th constitutional amendment actually brought all these changes to Article 13 and also Article 368. Now this particular amendment directly leads to the Keshwananda Bharti case. In the Keshwananda Bharti versus State of Kerala that was given in 1973, 24th Constitutional Amendment and Kerala Land Reforms Act 1963 was challenged. Now this particular act, that was the Kerala Land Reforms Act 1963, this act was placed in the 9th schedule through the 29th Constitutional Amendment, and therefore 29th Constitutional Amendment was also challenged. The issue that was raised in this particular case was the extent of the amending power that is there with Article 368. To what extent the amendments in the Constitution can be made through Article 368. Now there was argument that was raised by the union. The argument was that the amending power is unlimited. But the counter argument that was given by the petitioner it said that the amending power is wide, but it is not unlimited. Now, some of the reasons were given for such arguments. One reason was, the first reason was that such constituent power that was conferred on it by the Constitution, the constituent power that was conferred on the Parliament by the Constitution, it is given by the people, and the people, the same people, has given certain powers to themselves also. Those powers are the guarantee of the fundamental rights. Now here the Parliament cannot enlarge its own power to abrogate the limitations in the terms on which the power to amend was conferred. When the people, if we see the preamble of the Constitution, it started with the terms, "We the people of India." So we the people of India has given certain powers to us in the form of fundamental rights, and we the people of India through its Constitution establishes Parliament also. And therefore, Parliament cannot be more powerful than the people and cannot be more powerful to the extent that it can abridge the rights that the people has given to themselves. This Parliament is also created under the Constitution, and therefore, the amending power that is there in the Parliament shall be limited. The Parliament is not very competent to destroy the fundamental rights and freedoms which the people has reserved for themselves, because this Parliament is itself created by we the people. The arguments were also put where it was said that there are certain implied or inherent limitations on the amending power, and the Parliament cannot abrogate such limits. So there are limits put for the Parliament. Parliament cannot cross those limits. Now here, while discussing all these things, the court held that Golaknath judgment was overruled, which denied the Parliament the power to amend the fundamental rights of the citizen. The Golaknath judgment was saying that the fundamental rights of the citizens cannot be amended. Now here the court held that fundamental rights can be amended, but the basic structures cannot be amended. It also said that 24th Amendment does not enlarge the amending power of the Constitution. It is only declaratory in nature. It said that all those clauses that were added to the 24th Amendment are valid. They are not a new concept introduced to the Article 368. The 24th Constitutional Amendment just declare that was there in Article 368. Now, Article 368 is most powerful, but it has certain limitations. The limitations are that it cannot amend the basic structure. And then the basic structure was explained by the court. Now, this particular judgment was given in as a 6-7 majority, and all the majority judges who gave this judgment, they wrote the judgment separately, and this all mentioned certain features of the Constitution that can be asserted or that can be taken up or that can be understood as the basic structure. Now, the issue here is that all the judges gave different provisions or mentioned different provisions as the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. If you see the basic structure mentioned by the judges, you will see that there is not a single basic structure that was mentioned which is common in all the judges. a structure or a provision mentioned as a basic structure by one judge may be similar to the basic structure mentioned by the other judges, but there is no unanimous view or on any one provision that is considered as a basic structure. So we have a list of basic structure with us, and the court also said that Parliament cannot use its amending power under Article 368 to damage, emasculate, destroy, abrogate, change, or alter the basic structure or framework of the Constitution. So these are the basic frameworks that were given in this particular judgment. Now, after this judgment comes the stage 3, where this judgment was actually applied. So the first ever case that came before the court where the court needed to apply the basic structure theory was the case of Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, that is in year 1975. Now, this is the third stage of the basic structure theory doctrine, where it was interpreted, elaborated, explained by applying it to the different situations. Now, in the Indira Gandhi case, the 39th constitutional amendment was challenged. Now, this 39th constitutional amendment, it amended certain provisions, and it also amended through an amending procedure the Representations of the People Act 1951 and 1974. The act was amended, and it was mentioned that the election of the Prime Minister is out of the purview of the Election Commission. Now, it is the responsibility of the Election Commission, if we see Article 328, to conduct free and fair election, which is very important for a healthy democracy. The democracy or the democratic setup of our nation is the basic structure of the Constitution that was held in the Keshavananda Bharati judgment only 2 years back. So such amendments are against the basic structure theory, and it was challenged because such amendments cannot be introduced as per the mandate that was given in the Keshavananda Bharati judgment. Now, the court actually invalidated the 39th constitutional amendment, and it added some more feature to the basic structure. It added that sovereign democratic republic status is a basic structure, equality of status and opportunity is a secularism, and rule of law that was not mentioned by any of the judges in the Keshavananda Bharati case was the new addition to the list of the basic structures. So one more feature of provision of the Constitution was added as a basic structure in Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case. After that, the 42nd amendment of the Indian Constitution came, which is also called a mini constitution. It was a result of a recommendation of Swarn Singh Committee report. And this particular amendment added clause 4 and 5 to Article 368. And these clause meant to say that basic feature of the Constitution can also be amended. Now, after that, this particular amendment, along with Article 31C, was challenged in Minerva Mills versus Union of India case. It was a matter of nationalization of a Sikh industrial unit. And here the court held that clause 4 and 5 of Article 368 are invalid. Now, it also added, this particular case also added one more provision to the list of the basic structure of the Constitution, and that is the harmony between fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy. Now, this feature was not mentioned in the Keshwananda Bharati judgment by any of the judges. So it is a new addition to the theory of the basic structure that was given in Keshwananda Bharati 1973. After this particular case, we had Vaman Rao versus Union of India that came in 1981. Now, in this particular case, the 9th schedule, along with Article 31A and 31B, was again challenged, and they were challenged on the basis that it is against the this amendments were against the basic structure theory that was given in 1973, because what was happening before the basic structure theory was given, or what happened in the first Constitutional Amendment Act, by which Article 31A, 31B, and 9 schedule was inserted, it validated the violation of the fundamental rights, or abridging the fundamental rights through the constitutional amendment. The situation now was that constitutional amendment was taken up as under the purview of law, and these amendments were violating the basic structure that is given in the Keshwananda Bharati judgment. Now here, the court actually removed the difficulty that was posed before the court by this case, and which arise due to the proposed basic structure theory of the Indian Constitution in 1973. The court held that all the amendments that happened till 24th April 1973, that was the date of judgment of Keshwananda Bharati case, all those amendments are valid, because otherwise it will create a great difficulty if all those amendments will be challenged before the court of law on the basis of the theory that was given in 1973. And the court said that amendments that were made after Keshwananda Bharati case, they will be open for the judicial review on the ground that they are violating the basic structure of the Constitution. So this particular case actually set a limitation period to challenge a particular legislative act or the amendment as the violation of the basic structure of the Constitution. Further, this particular doctrine was applied for the very first time for the executive actions. Earlier, it was applied to the legislative actions. Now it was applied to the executive actions that was there in the case of S.R. Bomai versus Union of India. And here the court decided that the secularism is the basic structure of the Constitution. The secularism was also earlier mentioned by the court in the Keshwananda Bharati judgment by one of the judges as the one of the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, the most important case in stage 3 of the proposed doctrine is M. Nagaraj versus Union of India, that was given in the year 2007. Now, the list of the basic structure was increasing. This particular case in this particular case, the court felt the need to establish a test how we will get to know that particular feature is the basic structure and the amendment is violating or altering the basic structure of the Constitution. M. Nagaraj case actually gave the general test, that is called the twin test, of ascertaining whether the basic structure of the Constitution is being violated or amended or not. It gives a twin test. First is the width test and the second is the test of identity. So if we speak in a simpler language, it says that not the change in the particular article, but the change in the essence of right must be the test for the change in identity. So, if the article is amended in its width, it is not said to be going against the basic structure, but by the amendment, the very identity of the article is changed. Then we will say that it is the amendment in the basic structure. For example, we have Article 15 that comes within the purview of right to equality. So if any amendment is done in Article 15, like clause 3 and 4 was added to Article 15. Now here, because equality or the rule of law is considered as the basic structure, that doesn't mean that inserting clause 3 and clause 4 by any of the amendment into Article 15 is amending the basic structure. We have to see what rights are given in Article 15, and does the clause 3 and 4 of the Article 15 will be affecting or impacting those rights that is given in that particular article, which is there in part 3. If the nature of the right is being altered, then it will be said that the basic structure is being touched upon and the basic structure is now amended, and those amendments can be held invalid. So in stage 3, in 2007 now, the explanation of the basic structure is given with the help of proposed twin test by the court. So in this way, the basic structure theory has been traveled from 1951 to 2007, and further after M. Nagaraj, we have to see what other challenges the court will be having in front of it regarding the application and the meaning of the basic structure theory, and how this basic structure theory will be further crystallized in the coming years to come. So, concluding the issue, we can say that basic structure theory is not a restriction in the amending power. There is no limitation, there is no restriction, but this theory is a guiding principle to retain the essence of the right while giving us the freedom to update the provision with the need of the time. As the time passed, the constitution has also needed to be updated, and this basic structure theory gives us the scope for the same. So it is not a restriction, it is a guiding principle of the constitution that was given by the apex court in the case of Keshwananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. So with this, I conclude my lecture here. Thank you very much for your participation and the patience listening.